Welcome back to A Good Run podcast. I'm Asher Feldman, and this is episode 9. In this episode, Dan and I discussed his introduction to working for Liz Holtzman, who at that time was the future Congresswoman Liz Holtzman, on a much smaller campaign in Brooklyn. Make sure you're keeping up with us on Twitter, on our blog, via WordPress, and any of the places that you get your podcast. Thanks for sticking with us through now 9 great episodes of Dan recounting his personal views on his political history. And we're looking forward to continuing this podcast over the next few weeks and into the new year in 2017. Enjoy this episode, and thanks so much. Feldman. We're here for episode 9. I'm sitting here with Dan, Asher here, asking the questions this day. How you doing, Dan?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So last time we were talking about your experience, your work in the Morgenthau campaign. Actually, we covered quite a few campaigns back to back in 1969 and 1970. So obviously, you've got a lot of experience now. You're still obviously very young. Looking for what's next.
Well, the truth is, the campaign I want to talk about now is also 1970.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. So this is really like almost, what is it now, 4 campaigns, basically, between 69 and 70?
In a way, the thing with Adler was like a 2 day, it was really short. But yeah,
still, we're talking about like 4 campaigns in 2 years. That's a lot.
In one
12-month period.
Yeah, in one 12-month period, right.
So I guess before we even get to that 4th campaign, is that what you... Like, are you looking to be that busy?
No, it just sort of happened.
Are you feeling like this is great, or are you feeling stressed out?
Oh, no, I was happy to do it. It was a lot of work, but I thought it was really interesting. And, since I wanted to run for office myself someday, it was all useful experience, I thought.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how do you happen upon your next stop on the tour?
All right, so... I mentioned that I had met Liz Holtzman working in the Lindsay campaign.
Yeah.
And sometime after the Morgenthau campaign, she asked me whether I would be willing to help her out in a very small race that she was running. When I say a very small race, it wasn't for a public position. It's for a Democratic Party position. That is, the political structure in New York is actually based on assembly districts. That is the boundary lines for the lower house of the state legislature. Mm-hmm. So that with each party, each major party, Democrats and Republicans, actually even the minor parties, they're organized by assembly district. So the body that I talked about earlier when we were in a previous podcast, when we were talking about the Morgenthau campaign, I was talking about the fact that he was not going to get the designation by the state committee as the official Democratic candidate, but he could get on the ballot and run a Democratic primary by petitioning.
Right.
Well, each assembly district in each party, the Democratic Party, Republican Party, and any other party that can mount enough support to run someone, the state committee of that party is elected. Each assembly district elects 2 committee persons, one male and one female. Mm-hmm. In Brooklyn, that person is also in the Democratic Party, the Democratic district leader. That is the party leader in that community, and whether it's the male or the female, it varies with the boroughs. Some boroughs have more than one district leader per district, but in Brooklyn there's just one. So the state committee person is the Democratic district leader. And so Liz was running to be the female state committeewoman / district leader for the 44th Assembly District. Now, she was given little chance. It was supposed to be a very uphill fight because that district was thought to be controlled by the regular organization as opposed to the reform organization. We talked earlier about the difference between reform and regular. The regular organization was run by what was called the Hesterberg organization. And that's because someone named Hesterberg had been the male leader in that district for over 100 years.
Well,
not the same person, obviously,
right.
but that family. She wasn't obviously running for the female slot, and that wasn't a Hesterberg. Their candidate was a woman named Estelle Hyatt. And by and large, I mean, I can't think of any other exceptions at the moment, although there probably were some. By and large, the female district leaders pretty much followed the lead of the male district leader.
At that time. Yeah.
Liz Holtzman had no such intention, of course, no matter who the male district leader was going to be.
Even a well-entrenched 100-year legacy.
Right, exactly. So I don't know exactly what she had in mind, although, later interview we'll talk about her subsequent congressional race. But this was her first campaign for political office. And I said public, but it's not for office. Yeah. It's political office. And she, I had no idea. I don't remember thinking what her chances were of winning, but she was someone I had become friends with. She asked me to get involved, and so I said yes. Now, Liz was, at that time, an associate, which is a beginning lawyer in a very prominent law firm, Paul Weiss Rifkin Goldberg and Garrison. The names have changed over the years, but I think it was something like that. But it's still called Paul Weiss, and it's still a very major law firm. And it's really one of the premier, one of the top law firms in the city. She had actually left the Lindsay in the fall, as you may recall. I worked with her in the Lindsay administration, and she was, when she was not working in the campaign, she was an assistant to the mayor. However, with the new in Lindsay's second term, beginning in January of 1970, a number of the idealistic young people who'd been in the first administration, like Liz, left. And why? Hard to say, but people like the Younger organization, professional political operatives, I think they began to play a more prominent role, and I think people like Liz were less comfortable in the administration. So in any case, she went back to the firm, but only there for a few months. She then takes on this race. Now, committeewoman, district leader is not a full-time job. You can do that while still practicing law, which she did. It was, of course, her intention. But anyway, this district was heavily Jewish at the time, and sort of in central Brooklyn. Well, Brooklyn has a few centers, but the Flatbush Nostrand area, up to just south of Prospect Park, and she campaigned assiduously. I mean, she was nonstop, just subway stops, bingo parlors, movie theater lines, bus stops. I mean, any place she could campaign, she campaigned.
What was she up against? Was this Estelle Hyatt? What was she like? Estelle
was a pleasant woman. I believe she may have been a school crossing guard at the time. Actually, years later, when I was elected to office, Estelle was on the staff of a colleague of mine. She's a perfectly pleasant woman, but not,
not Liz Holtzman.
Not Liz Holtzman. Not a pioneering type.
But so is Liz reacting to the challenge that she sees as in this campaign, or is she just that's just who she is? That's how she would be, regardless of who she's running against.
That's a normal manner.
Right.
But I was thinking about this campaign recently and how the kind of campaign she ran then, I think, would not be successful in any demographic today.
At any level of politics.
At any level of politics. Her campaign essentially was, hi, my name is Liz Holtzman. I went to Harvard Law School and, an assistant to the mayor. And in this district, at that time, it was almost enough that she went to Harvard Law School, and she was a young lady who went to Harvard Law School. I mean, the voters who tended to be older. I mean, as you know, propensity to vote varies directly with age. So the heaviest voting bloc is the older people. These older Jewish people in Brooklyn see a nice young lady who went to Harvard Law School, they're probably going to vote for her.
Yeah.
I don't think that works anymore.
Yeah, I guess the establishment politics being what they are.
Right. I mean, and also there's a increasing skepticism of institutions that at that time commanded automatic respect. I don't think any institution today commands that kind of respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the skepticism has become so deep and pervasive. Whether we're talking about religious institutions, the government, the universities, the press, it doesn't work that way now. But in any case, it was a lot of fun. The campaign drew a very eclectic group of people.
Well, I mean, was the major goal of the campaign then to just like get Liz in front of as many people as possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing, I mean, I did think, if I remember correctly, my role was primarily recruiting election day workers who would have several different jobs. They would either be people who would stand outside the polling place with what we call palm cards. A palm card is a card you hand the voter that lists a slate of candidates. By the way, on her slate was a fellow, also an insurgent who was running for a reformer, who was running for the assembly at the time, whose name was Mel Miller. I can't remember who the male district leader candidate was on Liz's ticket, but nor do I remember who was on the palm card higher up in the ticket. But I don't know if they had if the ticket had at that point either Howard Samuels or Arthur Goldberg. Those were the two remaining candidates in the gubernatorial primary. My candidate, Bob Oberthal, having dropped out by then. Right. So the palm card, you hand the person a card and you say, we hope you'll vote for these people. And so sometimes they associate them with you. If they like one of them, they might vote for the whole slate. So I recruited people who were doing the palm cards. I recruited poll watchers. You know, each candidate has their poll watcher to make sure there's nothing fishy going on at the polling place. I recruited people who would be what I think we now call them pullers. So up until election day, you make phone calls to all the registered Democrats that you can get phone numbers for. Ask them for whom they think they're going to vote. You mark the ones that are positive for your candidate. Mm-hmm. On primary day, your pullers go to the apartments, ring the doorbell, and say, "Have you voted yet?" Or you call them, make sure because it is well known that people may intend to vote for you, may like you, and may not get around to voting.
Right.
So the pulling operation can be quite significant.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember whether we had a roving crew or not. I was a rover.
What would the roving crew?
The roving crew goes to the polling places, making sure everybody there is supposed to be, making sure your palm card people are there, making sure your poll watchers, just make sure there are no problems and so forth. I did that, I guess, but I don't think we had roving crews. It was only one assembly district. It was probably just
how many polling places are we talking about?
Well, there are usually roughly 100 election districts in an assembly district, and so. But many of them would be bunched up in the same polling place. So we probably had, if I remember correctly, 25, somewhere between 25 and 40 polling places. It depends how spread out they are. Yeah. I don't remember, but it's somewhere in that range, 25, right. 30, 35, something like that.
So you're basically in charge of like a pretty multifaceted, many-layered operation, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, I was doing the election day. Well, I mean, other people worked on it too, right. But I think I was coordinating the election day work, and I believe, was, I may be mixing it up with the congressional when I did some of that too. I had developed the sort of election day operations as my campaign specialty. Mm-hmm. So by that point, I was doing various election day things. I probably was also helping to helping to canvass the voters by telephone up into election day, finding out, right. Identifying the positive voters. Yeah. But we worked out of Liz's parents' basement.
Really?
Yeah, she was actually she was running from that address in Ditmas. 1825 Ditmas Avenue, I think it was. or 1815 Ditmas, one or the other.
It's in the 1800 block of
Right,
Ditmas Avenue.
Right, between East 19th and East 18th. I got a key to the basement, and it was wild. I mean, I remember a woman named Irina Klefish, who is now quite a distinguished professor of poetry and literature, I think, at one of the Ivy League schools. At the time, was this very young woman who was kind of like constantly singing during. I mean, it was very flaky at the time, delightful person. Other friends of hers, Rebecca Folkman, I remember. Jonathan Folkman, Rebecca's younger brother, I think later volunteered in my campaign. I think he was probably in that one too. People, friends of hers from. You know what? I think at that point she was no longer at Paul Weiss. I think she'd gone to Wachtell Lipton by then. Mm-hmm. She was at Paul Weiss before the Lindsay stint, and then at Wachtell afterward. So she had people, friends that she had made both at Paul Weiss and at Wachtell. Mm-hmm. Some of whom I became friends with. Joe McDonald, who was a super nice guy, did the election law work for us. A fellow named Bernie Nussbaum, who is still one of the major partners at Wachtell, and also eventually became counsel to President Bill Clinton when he was president. Really terrific people that I got friendly with at that time, and many of whom I stayed friends with for many years. A fellow named Paul Osofsky. I mean, just very, very good people, but fun people too. Yeah. And Liz's parents were around. Her mother would, constantly give us food, make sure everybody was happy and got enough rest. And of course, in my case, getting rest sometimes it meant sleeping over in the basement. Right. So it was a very sort of family-style campaign,
So what? Obviously, she's got a lot of people coming to help out. Camping out in a basement on Ditmas Ave. What do you think people were responding to in that context? Not to vote for her necessarily, but to volunteer for her, to get behind a campaign of hers. What were they responding to?
Liz, first of all, Liz is really, really smart. I mean, very, very bright, ethical person who had, for example, been a civil rights worker down south at a time when it was very dangerous. Her intelligence and integrity were so obvious, and energy, intelligence, integrity, and energy, that this is just the kind of person you want in public office. I mean, this is just political office, but you want it in public life. Mm-hmm. She also had a very quirky kind of personality. Earlier in the year, before she started the campaign, I got my acceptance letter from Harvard Law School, and I remember proudly telling Liz, I just got accepted to Harvard Law School. She says, "Congratulations." I hated it. I mean, she was not like anybody else. Yeah. Her brother. She has a twin brother, Robbie, who is a very gregarious, friendly guy, neurosurgeon. Also bright, obviously. A very good neurosurgeon. I think for me, part of what attracted me to Liz, and maybe it was other people too, was that although she campaigned and although she could be very forceful, I had the sense that underneath that was kind of a shy, sensitive person. And my theory has always been that her brother, Robbie, who is just naturally gregarious, these are twins, went to the same high school. Right. Robbie didn't have to go into politics because he didn't have to prove that he was, a good people person. Liz, who's, I think, essentially sensitive and shy, partly went into politics to prove that she could do it. Right. And that gave me a kind of a feeling of almost protectiveness about her. Yeah. And I think other people may have responded that way too.
Yeah. And what is it like working for her then?
Well, working for Liz in the campaign and working for her in her later congressional office are two very different things.
Sure. But just at this point, what is it like?
She was just busy. I mean, she directed the campaign to a certain extent, something I never did in my own campaigns. I mean, she tried to control the campaign. I think pretty much largely did so. Yeah. But she was so busy as a candidate that she'd give you quick directions, and then she'd be off doing her thing, and you'd be doing yours. So there wasn't that much interaction with her. Again, compared to the way when I ran her years later when I ran her congressional office, the interaction was constant.
Well, I mean, I guess the point that I'm getting at is, she may not be constantly paying attention or like micromanaging, but she's an attractive enough candidate, an inspiring enough leader, like positive enough potential force in public and political office that people who are working for her are still motivated, even though she may not be around.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And she worked so hard that you almost, you couldn't not work hard.
Right, you felt bad if you weren't.
Right, exactly. Hard. Yeah. So it was an interesting campaign. So ultimately, she wins the campaign. She beats Hyatt by a pretty substantial margin, and although I don't think he ever admitted it. I think her coattails elected Mel Miller.
Oh, yeah.
He won, but not by as big a margin as she did.
So explain the relationship between the Holtzman campaign and the Miller campaign beyond the palm cards, or was there something like
the Democratic Club, Independent Democrats of Flatbush, was the Reform Club, as opposed to the Hesterberg Club. Mm-hmm. And the club, was supporting Miller and Holtzman and whoever else. And that was of course, they, in addition to our campaign people, the Reform Club had some people campaigning too. It was more or less
group effort.
Oh, what was his name again? I can't remember. There's a fellow with an Israeli accent who later became, I don't know if he became district leader that election or later, but he was from Israel. He lived here forever and never lost his Israeli accent. But he became the male district leader much later. He must have been involved in that campaign. And so there was certainly overlap and coordination.
Yeah.
But Liz and Mel came from different places, and they 2 years later, when Liz ran for Congress and Mel was in the assembly, and he refused to endorse her, that began. I mean, as I said, there was never a whole lot of love lost there.
Right.
Either way.
Right. But as you're describing it, it sounds like she helped him win that election.
I think she did. Yes.
Yeah. So what's the
Jacob? Somebody was the guy whose name I'm trying to remember, but I can't.
It's fine. So what is the immediate aftermath of that election? Are you now involved in Liz's office?
No, or? There was no office.
Right.
District leader, you don't get an office by being district leader.
Right.
You're just there.
Right.
Oh, so what she did was there was some kind of law that gave certain privileges to the male district leader and not to the female. Yeah. Liz brought suit.
Really?
A lawsuit to end that, and she did. I mean, she didn't waste any time. She becomes district leader. She immediately starts making waves.
Yeah.
I mean, she was there to do stuff.
Right.
And again, I don't remember who the male district leader was, but I don't know if anybody else does either, because Liz was the more outspoken person.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Absolutely. So, and how long were those terms? Those were 2 years.
2 years.
Okay. So she spent the next 2 years, I'm sure, doing that.
Well, practicing law and doing that, and she was. I mean, it was again. This is not a job. This is just a political position. So she still was with the law firm.
Yeah. But
she did all the stuff she was doing as State Committeewoman and district leader.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So for your
I went off to law school.
So obviously you're going to law school. Law school is difficult. Right. Are you, in the years that you're at Harvard, are you keeping in touch? What's the relationship?
Yeah, we stayed in touch. I don't remember the content of our conversations, but certainly 2 years later, when she had a much bigger race to run, she did call me. But
we'll get to that.
We can say that for another time.
Yeah.
The in between, when I arrived at Harvard Law School, I obviously did not lose my interest in politics.
We've set ourselves up well for a couple very interesting podcast episodes in the next couple of weeks. So thanks for the time. And
thank you.
We'll see everybody next time. We'll probably do one or two more before the end of the year. Then we'll take a quick break for New Year's. And then we'll be back with more A Good Run with Dan Feldman. Thanks, everyone.